Um, well, I'll go ahead and get started, and then hopefully she'll show up here in a few minutes. My partner Namakshi and I worked on a project where we tried to use AI to help support students who are really nervous about taking a mathematics course. My name is Shanda Hood. I am a teaching associate professor at the University of Arkansas. I most often teach foundational mathematics courses like college algebra or finite math or survey of calculus. So I get a lot of students who are very nervous about taking a math class. And usually they're not shy about telling you how much they don't enjoy math and that they're only in your class because it's a requirement for their degree program. But I've found that this is a really great group of students to get to work with because, they once they figure out what they can do, there's really just no stopping them. They do really well. So the course that we were working on is this course called Survey of Calculus. The majority of our students are some variety of business major. We have roughly 500 to 900 students in this course each semester. Class sizes are roughly 70 to 80 students. Again, most of them are business majors. I do get an occasional psychology major or biology major, but the vast majority of them are non-STEM majors. Now, this course is divided into 4 units. The first unit, we talk about limits. So basically, we give the students a picture of a graph, or we talk about how to talk about what's going on with the function as x approaches a particular value, and they don't really tend to struggle too much with this section. Unit 2, we talk about how to find a derivative. But the section that trips them up is Unit 3, where we talk about applications of the derivative. So now not only are they using rules or formulas to find derivatives of functions, but they have to do something with it. And so this is the section where we decided to target our efforts to sort of increase success in this class. And so we started doing some reading. And it turns out that this thing called the protege effect is a real thing. The protege effect is this sort of phenomenon that says that we learn more and we tend to remember things a little bit better when we are presenting or teaching this information to other people. When we know we have to share it with someone else, we're going to look at it a little more closely. We're going to think about the kinds of questions that people could ask us. We're going to think about where the possible gaps in our knowledge might be. And maybe we're going to, work a little harder to make sure we understand all of these things. I see Nama chiming in now. Hey, Nama, can you hear me? Okay, so I'll just keep going. So we know that having students explain things can be a pretty effective way to help them engage with the material and learn the material a little bit better. Now, we can have students come to the board or present things in class, but we also know that that causes a little bit of anxiety when they're live in class in front of people and they're having to explain these concepts that maybe they're not very familiar with or they're already nervous about. But it has been shown that explaining something through a video presentation can be more effective than writing out an explanation. So we decided to go in the direction of having our students create this video presentation to explain material related to Unit 3, which was the unit where they were having the issues. We also believe that presenting information in this video format is going to be less stressful than presenting in person because they have a chance to practice what they're doing. They can, re-record. They can really think about what they say. So we feel like it's a little less stressful. Nama, I saw you unmute for a second. Are you
Yeah,
in?
I'm in now. It was,
Okay.
sorry about that. It's just was very slow.
No worries. Do you have anything to add?
Oh no, this is exactly what I wanted to say. So yeah, research has shown that video presentations, it links back to the protege effect as well. When you create presentations, you're forced to process information more thoroughly. and make connections, and it reduces anxiety and stress because you're not presenting in person. So it takes away that cognitive load, if you will, a little bit. Shanda, you can keep going.
Well, we also know that for many of our students, using mathematical language is tough. So, for example, in that unit 3 that we were talking about, we have them use derivatives to talk about where a function is increasing or decreasing. And so when you ask them questions or they're asking you questions in class, they'll say things like, they'll say, it's increasing because it's positive, right? And so we want them to say something a little bit more mathy. We want them to say something like, the function is increasing on this interval because the derivative is positive on this interval. But they're really resistant to using these words because they're worried that they're going to say something wrong. But we also know that there are connections between using language correctly and understanding the material. We know that being able to use the vocabulary can help us understand the material. Did you have anything to add, Nama?
Sure, exactly like what you're saying, Shanda. There is research to back this up that especially mathematics, and scientific subjects and other disciplines as well, there is very discipline specific language and terminology. And in order for a student to feel that they're part of that discipline, they're part of that academic course that they're taking, whether it's mathematics or physics or chemistry, in order to be able to use language precisely and correct terminology and vocabulary makes them feel that they belong in that field, and they can take ownership of the material as they are learning. So definitely what you're saying, there's a lot of research to back this up. All right, Shanda, you can keep going.
So what we decided to do is sort of put all these ideas together into creating this video project. And we did this for the first time back in fall of 2023. So we hadn't really been using AI or ChatGPT very much. We weren't super familiar with it. But what we did, we called this Activity 5 because we had other activities in the class. We, in a section of Survey of Calculus, we had these students get together in groups. Their only real direction was that they were going to create a video. They could make it however they wanted. They could do it by, presenting at a board, or they could make PowerPoint slides or whatever they were comfortable with. But they were allowed to use ChatGPT to create the script. And the reason that we did that is because we thought if they're nervous about using the technology, or the terminology, then they're going to create this script. They'll practice this script when they're recording their video. They'll have to think about whether or not what ChatGPT has said to them is correct. But they'll also get used to using the words and the language, and that's going to in turn affect their understanding of the material. And so ideally, this is going to be reflected in their test scores, right? In my head, this was going to be amazing. They were going to do amazing on the exam. And so, well, we did this. I did this with one section. There were roughly 10 sections of Survey of Calculus in fall of 2023. I was teaching 3 of them. And so I had section 4, section 3, and section 11. And you can see the scores here for the first 3 exams. So for exam 1, sections 3 and 4 were both in the low 90s. Section 11 was a little bit lower. And then the same kind of thing happened with exam 2. Sections 3 and 4 were both in the mid to low 80s, but section 11 was a lot lower. And so I chose to do this activity with section 11 because I thought this is the class that is not doing as well as the others, and so maybe it would be the most beneficial for this section. And so I did this with just section 11. I had them create these videos, and then once they created their videos, they were shared in the LMS so that other students could watch their videos to help review for the exam. And then you can see here that I got really excited when I saw this because If you look at section 3 on exam 3, their scores went down a little bit. In section 4, the scores went down a little bit. But in section 11, their scores on exam 3 were very close to their scores on exam 2. And the reason that made me feel a little excited is just anecdotally, over teaching this course for the last 10 years, what we normally see is that the test scores always drop on exam 3. And so once there's a gap between two classes, that gap only tends to widen. And when that didn't happen here, I got really excited and I thought, well, maybe there is something to this using AI to help them create this video. So the next semester, I tried it again. I only had 2 sections. I did this with both of my class sections, and you can see I did not have the same results. So I was pretty disappointed because the test scores on exam 3 just continued to go down in both of those sections. So we went back to the drawing board and we thought about some possible reasons that that might have happened. And so we kind of restructured this project. And so the way that it had been set up initially was there was really no scaffolding. The students had this assignment, they had a due date for their video, they had all the components that they needed to submit to do well on this project. But they could have really done it all in one day. Like if the project was due on Thursday, there was nothing preventing them from just creating a script on Thursday morning and running through it once to create their video. So we kind of scaffolded this project a little bit so that different components were due on different days so that they would have time to create that script, think about the material, go through the questions, ask questions if they needed to, and practice that terminology. But then when exam 3 rolled around, so I did this with both of my sections just to see what would happen. And you can see here that we didn't see a huge improvement in that exam 3 score compared to the overall average for all 12 or so sections of survey of calculus that semester. Now, so I kind of feel like it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to, because in my head, the video was going to just, help them really understand, and they were going to crush exam 3. And so when that didn't happen, I was a bit disappointed, but we started looking through their responses to the survey. We gave them a survey to ask them about their experiences. And one of the questions that we asked them was, do you believe that participating in the creation of a video presentation affected your comfort level using mathematical terminology? And we saw that 81% of the students responded to this question with a yes. They said, yes, this helped me. They said something about having to say the material multiple times as they recorded their video. One person talked about teamwork and collaboration. There were some no's. 14% of the students said that this was not helpful. But in reading their responses, you see one like this that says, we think we were comfortable using the terminology after doing the lesson in class, but we think doing this project helped us practice using the terminology and ensured we knew how to use it correctly. So in other words, they're saying it didn't help, but it did help. So I feel pretty good about even those no responses, because I think on some level it was helpful. We also asked them if using ChatGPT to create their script had any influence on their level of comfort in using the mathematical terminology. This time, 74% of our students said yes, 21% said no. Most of the students who said yes made some comment about, it gave us a place to start. We were more confident because we knew the things that we were thinking were correct. And then the students who said no said things like, I was already comfortable after the lesson in class, or I was already comfortable after I finished my homework, so this wasn't really very helpful. We also asked them if just using ChatGPT to create the script had any influence on their overall understanding of the topic. And we did get positive responses here as well. Roughly 82% said that this was helpful. A lot of students said that it was helpful because they had to understand the material so that they could make sure that the things that ChatGPT was saying were correct. And 18% of the students said that it was not helpful, but these were also students who said it was not helpful because I was already comfortable with the material going into the project. So even though we didn't see the results that we wanted based on the test scores, I feel like this was a useful project because the students talked about things that were really important. They talked about having to understand the material to make sure that what ChatGPT told them was correct. They talked about having to read it multiple times. They talked about really having to engage. And just anecdotally, I feel like it helped create a relationship with students because they would come into my office and ask questions about their scripts or about their videos. And so I feel like this is a project that I'll continue to use in my classes. And here are a few references. Mama, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think like even though, we were really hoping to see the idea when we began the project that this translates into improvement in their test scores. And even though we didn't see that, but looking at the qualitative data and the surveys and some of their responses, and that's a big, 80% or so of students responding in a way that it helped them. If in some way it benefited them in building some confidence, I mean, I feel like that's something that you did, and this was Shanda's idea to begin with, to use AI, and this was the time where AI was just coming out, and we were thinking students are going to use it anyways, and so why not make it a tool where they can, use it and apply it and actually see that they'll have to verify and they'll have to review what the generative AI is creating for them just to verify if that information is correct. Because not everything that AI gives you is valid or correct. So in a way, they're going to use it anyways, but then it helps them build connections to verify the information. I think that was the point. And and I feel that their survey responses are very positive, and I absolutely agree, Shanda, that we should continue using and exploring how to make AI tools better integrated in some of the math classes that we teach.
All right.